Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into Bibliovideo, the YouTube channel all about Canadian kids' books. My name is Spencer Miller, and today I am joined by Wanda John-Kehewin. Welcome, Wanda, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you
Um,
so much. Thank you for the invite.
yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to talk to you and introduce you to some of our viewers. I was doing a little bit of background research, just poking around your website. And when I found your bio, I just thought it was an incredible bio. Are you okay if I read that as a way to just kind of introduce you to our viewers?
Sure.
Yeah, I'll read it out here. It says Wanda John-Kehewin is a Cree writer who came to Vancouver, BC from the prairies on a Greyhound when she was 19 and pregnant, carrying a bag of chips, $30, and a bit of hope. Wanda has been writing about the near decimation of Indigenous culture, language, and tradition as a means to process history and trauma that allows her to stand in her truth and to share that truth openly. Wanda has published poetry, children's books, graphic novels, and a middle grade reader with hopes of reaching others who are trying to make sense of the world around them, especially if you think you come from nowhere and don't belong either. I just thought that was such a great introduction to who you are and some of the things that you write about. Um, as it mentions in your bio, you've written poetry, you've written a graphic novel series, and most recently you've released a middle grade book, and that's the one that we're going to focus and talk about mostly today, called Hopeless and Hope. For those who aren't familiar, Wanda, could you explain a little bit in your own words what that book is all about?
Um, I thought I had a copy in here, but that book was, I actually worked with children in care for over 4 years. And that was like sort of the place where this started. I guess the journey of this book started because I was working with children who, I guess, were asking me questions about, well, why am I here? Um, why isn't my mom able to take care of me? And like, it just was heartbreaking for me to kind of have to try and answer the children. And I was like, are there books out there? Because I was working with an Indigenous organization. Are there books out there that sort of can help understand I guess, the child welfare system, or perhaps maybe parents, things that they're struggling with, or kids questions like what are the questions they have. So I think it really was a journey for hopeless and hope. It's always been in the forefront of my mind to kind of help others to understand certain aspects of the system and maybe parenting, and to kind of take that onus of responsibility off their shoulders, and not have them go, maybe it's me, maybe I did this, or maybe I caused this, right? Because I remember also being a child in care going, why am I here? Is it me? Am I, maybe I made my mom drink, maybe, yeah, it was basically, maybe I made my mom drink. Maybe, I drove her to drink, and maybe that's why we're in care. So it was like all these different sort of thoughts. And as a kid, you don't really see in the bigger picture exactly what's going on.
The story does such a great job of I think giving that really important representation, as you pointed out, to youth growing up in care, Indigenous youth growing up in care. I felt like the story was told with a lot of love. I really felt that shine through. I felt a lot of love for Nevaeh and her family by the end of the story. Another big important part of this book and this story, not just the experience of being in the group home, but also you really dive into the experience of growing up in poverty and don't shy away from some of the challenges that that presents to Nevaeh and her family. I think poverty is a topic and a theme that I think is really underexplored in children's literature. I think we don't always want to address that reality head on. It's difficult to think about kids who are growing up in those really difficult situations. So how were you able to speak to that in this book, and why did you want to make sure you included some of those realities for Nevaeh and her story?
I wanted to be able to reach those children who are asking themselves, how come I don't have this? How come I don't have that? Or, when you're going to school and it's after Christmas time and people are like, well, I got a new, I don't know, Apple Watch Christmas,
Mhm.
or I got this, I got, I don't know, some expensive thing. I got a tablet, I got an iPad, I got an iPhone. And it's like, not, how about those kids that don't have that? I wanted to speak to it in a sort of like a down to earth way so that it was relatable to other children who didn't have everything, you know? And I think as a child growing up, I like to just read and to live through the book through vicarious experience and experience somebody else's life. So I think I wanted to do that as well. So people who could read it, so people who would read it would kind of think about that experience and maybe think about others as not being able to afford new shoes or not being able to afford this and that. And there's reasons behind it. And to kind of get them to think um, on a bigger level instead of looking at it going, oh, look at that person. They don't even have new shoes. Look at their shoes, you know, and kind of go, oh, maybe this is why they don't have shoes. So I kind of wanted to open up that conversation as well of what poverty is, and it's not the kid's fault who can't afford the pair of shoes. Or yeah, I think it was really important for me. This book was really important for me to bring to the forefront a lot of these issues that actually exist.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the way you described it as very like down to earth. Like it felt very just real and relatable, or even in the parts where I didn't relate, like I could easily connect to what was going on, and I think it really grew my understanding as well. So I think you nailed it. Part of those challenging experiences that you represent, something that I kept picking up on when I was reading, was that Nevaeh has a hard time allowing herself to feel happy or allowing herself to relax when she notices I think it's a boy with great teeth. She says she feels guilty because her Nokum's in the hospital, and she says, how can someone be noticing, a cute boy when, my grandma's going through a difficult time? Or similarly, when she's in the group home and she's finally able to just kind of have a moment to herself in the washroom, and she discovers all these like soaps and candles and body baths and things to just kind of relax and take care of yourself with, she feels almost guilty to do so. Could you speak to some of those feelings and where you think those feelings come from for Nevaeh?
I think I think I've even had those feelings, which is why I can write about it.
Mhm.
And those feelings, I kind of, even our grandmothers have those feelings. That's why, some people are like, they give the shirt off their back, or, it's because they're so busy taking care of others that you forget to take care of yourself. And then when we are faced with things like bubble baths and soap, it's like, well, how do I use this? I've never seen that. It's like, okay, this is for self-care. It's like discovering that people actually do self-care, and then realizing, hey, I can actually do this. Hey, this actually feels nice. So it's like a discovery as well, like to get others. I guess I wanted others to kind of think about it as well, going, yeah, hey, I don't really take baths for a long time and use this or that or the other thing. And it's like just kind of thinking about self-care. And I think it was also to sort of explain, what was I trying to explain? It's kind of like people who come from trauma or people who have had a hard life actually don't know how to do self-care, right? It's something that we should be learning as we're growing, and our parents or teachers, or we should be learning about self-care. But sometimes in some families, that's not even something that's even brought up.
Yeah.
So in my family, it definitely wasn't when I was growing up. So I think it was important for me to include that in the book because it's a part of my journey right now to kind of go, how do I do self-care? So even at 52 years old, I'm still learning. Okay, well, how do I do that self-care? Because it's not innate and it's not something that was taught.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that was a detail that you included. And that is such an important message about self-care, that we all learn how to give ourselves those moments, to give ourselves those breaks and those moments to heal. And you spoke to how that's part of recovering from trauma. I think that's a big part of this story, is recovering from trauma and healing. In particular, in this book, Nevaeh uses poetry as a way of expressing herself and her feelings. And there's also this really great storyline where her grandmother Ornokam hands her her mother's journal, and Nevaeh is able to read her mother's experiences, and that's also very helpful in her journey of healing and forgiveness. I know that you're a poet yourself, so can you speak to some of the importance of like poetry and writing and reading as a way to like for young people to kind of deal with the challenges that they're going through?
With writing, it's a way that you can process your feelings or process even trauma.
Mhm.
For me, it's a therapeutic way to process whatever it is I'm feeling about something. Some people are well versed and go, well, I feel this about that, and they could say it right away. But for some other people, the act of writing it, so the physical or writing it or even typing it, is very therapeutic. So I
Mhm.
think that's what I found about poetry for me. Like when my first book was published in 2013, that was written through depression,
Yeah.
or maybe it was self-awareness through, yeah. And then it's like it was so therapeutic, and I just wanted Nevaeh to be able to um, talk about feelings, I guess, with free thought, free writing. I
Yeah.
don't call those my poems, they're her poems, right? Like, because
Yeah.
it's like she seems so real to me, and I forgot what she wrote because they're
Mhm.
hers, right? So, I forgot the other half of the question.
Just do you have any advice kind of like for young people who might be going through difficult things? Do you think that writing and poetry could be a way for them to help process some of what they're going through?
I really think that everybody can use writing as a tool, or even painting, like any art
Mm.
form, as a way to process trauma, because your brain really can't do two things at once. It's kind of like when people work on, writing and stuff, like it's just that act of writing that actually can help you process something or that trauma. Because if you ask me right now how I feel about this, I'm like, I don't know.
Mhm.
But once I start writing, the words will come, right? And yeah, so there was another part of that question that you had asked about what does the role of reading play?
Yeah.
And I think as a child growing up, reading really, I guess, saved me in a lot of ways, like having a childhood that had trauma in it, and
Mhm.
there was also love as well, right? So there was
Mhm.
a lot of these things. But reading helped take me out of my own life and into the world around me. So I wish I could have read books like this.
Yeah.
And instead, I was reading like, maybe I did need that kind of reading at the time, but I wish I would have read books like Nevaeh, Hopeless and Hope. I was reading Laura Ingalls, that's like super old. Laura Ingalls Wilder, Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah.
What else was I reading? Nancy Drew, I think, was another one of
Mhm.
them. And just reading, I guess Ramona Quimby, that's not the name of it. Blubber.
Mhm.
What was her name? What was her name? Oh my God, Judy Blume, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Reading those, I think
Mhm.
those were the closest to traumatic experiences that you know, yeah.
It's true. It's great that you highlight that reading, it does both things, right? It can just be an escape, which is very important. And when we read about those, like experiences of trauma, can also help us process. Like it does both things. Um, I wanted to ask you how you landed on the title of Hopeless and Hope, because I found the book to be very hopeful in many ways. Um, so why did you decide to name the book Hopeless?
I think when you're a kid in care, you can feel hopeless.
Yeah.
Or if your parents are struggling with addiction, or, it doesn't even have to be just alcohol addiction. It could be any kind of addiction, like gambling addiction, and they're never home, or even work. Maybe your parent like works too much and they just love working. I don't know if workaholic is a term or whatever, but it's like you can feel hopeless when you're trying to navigate the world and there's nobody around to help you do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did actually scout out Nevaeh's home during COVID, because we actually went to Hope. We're actually trying to drive to Alberta to go see my family, but then this is really just totally off on a tangent, but one of my dogs who has anxiety would not stop crying and would not leave the person I left her with alone, and she was shaking and shivering, so we had to drive back. And so we just said, okay, we're just going to go pick her up and we're going to stay in Hope, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then we were staying in Hope, and so I was like, maybe Nevaeh is from here. And then I took some pictures and I was like, hey, this side of town she could be from, because these are where all the older houses are, and the train tracks, and just sort of really world building. And I was like, yeah, she's from Hope, Hopeless and Hope, which is sort of, I don't know if it was, I think it was like an organic process. And I was like, hey, it's Hopeless and Hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. It like it's a title that catches your attention, and it makes you think. And I also love the setting of Hope. That was really cool to hear the story of how you settled on that. Because Hope is a place that I've driven through on my way back and forth to Vancouver, but I've never stopped there. And so I think being able to read about a small town and a place that I think these small towns in our country can easily be forgotten about. And I think that's kind of part of how Nevaeh feels at times, is almost forgotten about. Um, and so I just thought it was also a great setting. Of course, you also have kind of the metaphorical resonance in the name Hope. So it works really well. I wanted to ask you, oh, sorry, go ahead. Did you have?
I was just going to say there's this really amazing place. I think it's called Home. I think that's what it's called, but they have the greatest like fries and gravy there in Hope. If you ever want to travel to Hope and try to guess which house Nevaeh lives in.
Yeah, that is great. You talk about the fries and gravy in the book, I think, right? Does
I'm not
Nevaeh
too
mention?
sure.
I'm trying
Maybe.
to remember if she mentions going out with her family to eat as a special treat at some point, or at
I
least
think
wanting
I
to.
may have.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have to look it up. But I wanted to ask you about one of the other characters in the book, Misty. Misty is this, I think, really interesting and really intriguing character. They are non-binary, and Nevaeh meets them when Nevaeh moves into the group home. They share a room together, and Misty's the ending is left somewhat ambiguous for Misty. They leave the group home. You're not quite sure if they ran away or where they went, and by the end of the story, they haven't come back. And so Nevaeh is kind of left just to wonder and to hope that Misty's doing okay. Why did you decide to leave Misty's ending ambiguous?
Honestly, I think that happens to a lot of our youth.
Yeah.
And I think that happens to a lot of the missing and murdered Indigenous women.
Mm-hmm.
So doing a script right now, and I'm sort of doing the same thing. I think it's more of a statement to kind of go, well, you kind of have to wonder where they are. And it was kind of like a conscious choice to kind
Mm-hmm.
of go. And instead of people going, hey, we need to tie up this loose end, where's Misty? It's kind of like, oh, okay, because that happens to kids in real life or people in real life. We don't know where they went. We don't we just don't know where they went.
Yeah, I thought that was so important to include because Nevaeh's story, I think, ends quite hopefully. I think that there are a lot of things that wrap up or tie up for her story. But I think exactly what you said, it's very important to show that for kids in care, or for like, as you mentioned, like missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, sometimes those loose ends don't get tied up. We don't know, and that's something that's really hard to deal with and live with. So I thought that was really important to include, and I wanted to mention it. My last question for you, Wanda, is as a writer, as you talk about all of these really difficult topics and challenging topics, and you've mentioned how you even sometimes pull from your own experiences, I'm sure it's not always easy to write about. How do you practice that self-care, and how do you take care of yourself as a writer as you dive into some of these topics?
I think even before I answer that one, I'm going to answer with, it was such a pleasure to write this book because I knew who it was for, and I knew it would teach others about the things that other children in care or children growing up in poverty are dealing with. And it was such a pleasure to write because I think when you have trauma, it's something you will always have, but you'll learn the tools to cope with it. So I think I'm on the other side of all the traumatic experiences I've had, and I can sort of use the tools that I've learned to deal with it. So it was such a pleasure to write it because it was like writing it through experience and writing it because I was also in care for a few years and sort of similar story, addictions. Mom had addiction, and it's kind of like, then I've always been such a introspective person and watched the world around me, and just kind of like the role of the family system of Indigenous people. There's a lot of kids who are left with their grandparents, right? So I was raised by a grandmother. And the importance of that soup that, that lasts forever, comfort soup. And it's like, it was such a pleasure to write. So it didn't feel like work because it was a labor of love for Nevaeh. It was, and for other people who are going to read it, and for my children as well, like for them to kind of, maybe they're not ready to listen right now, but you'll get little seeds planted. I like to call it planting seeds. And how I take care of myself is I call it unpeopling. So I set out some time, like you see my lovely calendar here. I'll put it in my calendar where I'm going to unpeople. And I call that unpeopling. And I'm just like, going to do my favorite thing is watch my favorite show and, or read. And I'm also going to have my favorite snacks, which is probably isn't the healthiest because it's like chips. Because I'm so busy, I haven't taken a hot bath by myself, and we got this new pug who always just jumps in the tub with you. So it's like, and if you don't let him come in, he's like scratching the door, howling. So I haven't been able to take a bath in a long time. So I think that was one of the things I learned, and I wanted Nevaeh to learn, was like, oh, okay, well, what do I do in the bath? Because when you're growing up and you're in trauma, it's not like, oh, I'm just going to relax in this tub. It's like, hurry up, somebody else has to go in the tub. And it's not this pleasurable bath experience. So I would say when I go to a hotel or I'm far away from my pug, I will take advantage of the bathtub, right?
Yeah.
So self-care, what else do I do? I try to, the monkeys in the brain, I try to recognize them, like, oh, you're not good enough. Hey, there's that monkey in the brain. Okay, stop. And it's like recognizing those thoughts that we tell ourselves that are, going to send shots of cortisol through our body. So it's like recognizing when we're not being, like just recognizing the monkeys in the brain when we're not being good to ourselves or saying kind things to ourselves. And when you start to become aware and go, hey, stop that. It's like takes practice and go, oh, there's a monkey in the brain. So you can stop the monkey in its track instead of spiraling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great advice. You said that the book was a pleasure to write. It was a pleasure to read, and you called it a labor of love. And it felt that way when I was reading it. It felt like there was so much love in those pages. So thank you for writing it. We're almost out of time, and my last question is just to ask you, what projects do you have coming up next? And what can we expect to read from you soon?
I have a children's book coming out called, I think it's going to be called Mia Wears Orange. I also have the second graphic novel of the Dreams Vision series, Dream series. And a film script, which is going to be shot in April.
Mm-hmm.
And so just writing is what I love to do. So that's another thing that I do as a part of self-care, is just doing the writing. It's like that's
great. I'm so excited to hear that there's more projects on the way. I as an educator, as a teacher, as someone who's taught grade 9 students, who reminded me of Nevaeh, I am so thankful for writers like you who are telling these types of stories. They do so much good. So thank you for writing. Thank you for sharing your voice. I know myself and our viewers were looking forward to what you're going to write next. Thank you so much for your time, Wanda. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Spencer. I appreciate it. And thank you for such amazing questions that weren't super hard to answer.
Good.
Yeah.